we're hoping to provide some ideas and some seeds that might grow for paths to build tourism. There already is tourism in your region, obviously, but there are ways you might want it to grow. And so that's what we're going to be discussing. And then identify assets that are region-wide. So another thing that's going to be a key to this 4 hours is us talking about not just each of your communities, but the whole region as a whole, and how that is being defined. And then, as we all know, especially after a year of pandemic, there are a lot of challenges and gaps that are out there that you'll want to, that you're already thinking about how you want to fill, and we want to make sure that you're aware of how Washington Tourism Alliance can support you in those efforts, including future workshops and initiatives. So hopefully that was enough of me stalling while you slurped down a couple sips of coffee and got yourself organized, because like I said, a big part of today is not hearing from me, but it's about hearing from all of you. And so I'd love to turn it over to Mike to lead the effort to do introductions, to have people introduce themselves and say who you are. And if you're representing an organization or a company, you could say what that is. You're also perfectly acceptable to be a concerned citizen as well. So Mike, I'll turn it over to you to lead the introductions.
Okay, so I'm just going to go down the list, and sometimes these lists kind of shift around a little bit, so I will try to make sure to get everybody. First up on my list is here we go. Sonia Scott-Flair. Sorry, Sonia.
For effort, I'm Sonia Scott-Flair. I'm the Ponderosa Region Tourism Alliance Volunteer Executive Director, and I work in Ponderosa County and Northern Idaho.
Thank you, Sonia. Up next is Aidania Thompson.
Aidania Thompson, and I work for WSU. I'm their Master Gardener, Food Safety, and Emergency Management Communications Coordinator. So I'm the PIO for Stevens County, and I'm also on Colville, which is Stevens County City Council.
Thank you for being with us. Alicia, thank you for being with us.
Good morning, everybody. Alicia Benson. I'm the CEO of Greater Spokane Incorporated. It's the regional business development organization in Spokane, also the associate development organization for Spokane County, working with the Department of Commerce. And I just apologize for having my camera off. I'm actually in the process of dropping kids at school, so I will be online fully about 9.
No problem. Thank you. Allison, again.
Hi, Allison Gann. I am the program manager for recreation, hydropower, minerals, and special uses on the Colville National Forest. I will have to drop off for another call at 8:30, but I look forward to joining mid-morning again. Nice to see everybody.
And that's no problem. We understand you guys are all have very busy schedules today. Ben Wick.
Yeah, Ben Wick, the mayor of the city of Spokane Valley.
Thank you, Mayor Wick. And we have Craig Newman.
Morning, everybody. I'm Craig Newman. I work here on the Colville National Forest, this region's backyard, 1.5 million acres, and I am excited to be one of the founding members of our Northeast Washington Sustainable Tourism and Recreation team. A lot of you are represented here today. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you, Craig. Mayor Kaminskis. I'm butchering these names, I'm sorry.
Oh, 25 years, I still have trouble with it. So I know a lot of you have heard me say that before because it's really true. So hi, I'm Chris Kaminskis, Mayor of Liberty Lake. So just, this is my first encounter with WTA, so I'm really interested in hearing what it's all about. And as just like a lot of you, I'm kind of multitasking my regular job with this, so you may see me pop in and out, but I'll always have you guys on audio. Thanks.
Thank you so much for being with us, Mayor. Dave Blanford.
Morning, everyone. Dave Blanford. I'm Executive Director of the Washington Tourism Alliance. Really glad you all could join us here today. I am at SeaTac, and just so you know, I'm told I can sit here in baggage claim at a table with my coffee and lower my mask for this. So I did check, but we'll talk more soon. Thanks for joining us.
Dave. Derek Baziotis.
You're good, Mike. Everyone does that. Good morning, everyone. Derek Baziotis. I own a restaurant in Cheney and am the Spokane chapter of the Washington Hospitality Chair Board. So I'm excited to be here and hear everyone's ideas.
Thank you, Derek. Diana Thibodeau.
I'm your coworker, and you still said my last name wrong. I'm Diana Thibodeau, the Director of Operations for the Washington Tourism Alliance, and like many others, we'll have to hop off here in a bit, and we'll rejoin in a little bit.
All right, thanks, Diana. Ginger Ewing.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ginger, and I am an executive director of an arts nonprofit in Spokane, Washington called Terrain. I also have 3 Rusties and a cat by my feet, so I apologize in advance for that. And I grew up in Cheney, so go Derek.
Thank you, Ginger. Jane Jurgensen. Oh, I think Jane actually cannot, she does not have a microphone, she told me earlier. So thank you for being with us, Jane. Matt Lyons.
Morning, everyone. My name is Matt Lyons. I'm the executive director of a nonprofit organization called TREAD, and I'll be speaking about what we're doing over here in Chelan County a little bit later.
Thanks, Matt. Meg Winchester.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Meg Winchester. I'm the president and CEO of Visit Spokane, and I also have the honor of sitting on the WTA board.
Thank you, Meg. Mike Bentz.
Morning, everybody. I'm Mike Bentz. I'm in Chuwila, Washington. I'm representing the Chuwila Golf Course, the Chuwila Creative District, and the Chuwila Chamber.
All right, thank you, Mike. Ron Valencia.
Ron Valencia of Spokane County, also working from home here in Cheney, Washington.
All right, thank you, Ron. Rosemary Shaw.
I'm Rosemary Shaw. I'm the executive director for Colville Together, which is a Main Street program here in Colville. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for being with us. Sharon Ludwig.
Good morning. I am the board president of the Chuwila Performing and Cultural Arts Association. We commonly go by PACA. We operate a theater that we call the Chuwila Center for the Arts. I am also the volunteer office manager of the Chuwila Center for the Arts because we're an all volunteer organization. And I sit on the board with Mike Bentz on the creative district, and I'm involved in other things in Chuwila too. I've been here a long time.
Well, thank you, Sharon. Shelley Stevens.
Morning, everybody. I'm Shelley Stevens. I'm the regional marketer for the Tri-County Economic Development District, and we serve Ferry, Stevens, and Ponderosa counties. And I'm also on the board for the Creative District and a Chuwila resident. So go Chuwila.
Well represented today. And Stephanie Stims.
I'm Stephanie. I am the executive director for the International Selkirk Loop Scenic Byway in Eastern Washington, Ponderosa County, and Stevens County. Also extends into Northern Idaho and British Columbia.
Great. Trish.
Hi, I'm Trish Schwartz with Tulin's Distillery. I am just first time having a meeting like this, so I thought I would see how it goes. I'm glad to be here. Thanks.
Thanks, Trish. Wendy Hott.
Hi, everybody. I am the sidekick to Chef Chad White with Chad White Hospitality Group. For those of you who know him, he is opening or we're reopened Zona Blanca in Spokane this week. And so the schedule's a little bit crazy, but I'm a supreme note taker and I tend to volunteer for everything. So stand by. If you're not familiar with him, we have High Tide in 2 locations in Spokane. Zona Blanca just reopened this week, TT's Old Iron Brewery and Barbecue in the Spokane Valley. And then we do consulting for other restaurants and operations here in the area. So we have our fingers in a lot of pies and like to feed people that way as well. Thanks for having me on. I'll be on and off as well because I'm working from home today. And of course the husband scheduled the lawn guys to come today. So at some point I'll have to let my Rusties in the house. So have a good morning, everybody, in case I don't chime in when you need me.
All right, thank you, Wendy. And on the phone, we also have Donna Malvik. It looks like you do not have the ability to, your microphone is not there. So, okay, that gets us through the intros. Back to you, Dan.
That's a great list, and I'm really excited to learn more about what each of you do,
Meg?
which is
I think,
actually the point. Oh, yes, go ahead, Meg.
I think we missed Dean Feldmeyer.
Oh.
Did we miss Dean? Dean, are you on? Yeah.
I'm here. Yeah, I'm just sitting in kind of on behalf, I'm on the State Hospitality Board and also the board chair for Visit Spokane, as well as managing the DoubleTree Hotel at the Convention Center here in Spokane.
I apologize there, Dean. Sometimes these lists are moving around a little bit, so I apologize for missing it. And joining us here in a second, we have Leslie.
Mike, can you hear me?
Yes.
Mike?
There you go. Now we can't hear you, Donna. Sorry, your icon of the microphone wasn't there, so go ahead.
Okay, yeah. Hey, I'm Donna Mulvick from the Kalispell Tribe in Ponderosa County, and I'm also on the Greater Newport Area Chamber Board, as well as the International Selkirk Loop. Great to hear, this exciting movement to bring, to have a really proactive and focused effort on tourism here in Washington State. Thank you.
Great. Also, just joining us was Leslie Brassfield. Leslie, if you're comfortable just introducing yourself and who you're with, that'd be great.
Oops. Good morning. I'm with the City of Spokane Valley Economic Development Division.
Great. Okay, Dan, I think we're ready.
Okay, great. Thank you. And yeah, and thanks for speaking up for folks we might have missed. Really important to not miss people. And Mike, I just reshared my screen. Just can you confirm that you're seeing the slides, right? Okay, very good. Thank you. All right, so, and again, once again, my name, for those who just joined, my name is Dan Moore. I'm helping facilitate this workshop and this whole destination development assessment series that Washington Tourism Alliance is doing in all 11 regions of the state. And again, just to remind you, I live in the Seattle area, and I just want to do a very quick land acknowledgement. So the land that I'm on is traditional Duwamish territory. And I think in the tourism industry, we are blessed to have incredible land that we get to invite people on. And it's very important from my perspective that we acknowledge that there were people here since time immemorial and are still here today. And that those are and so where I live is the traditional Duwamish territory. And so I would like to acknowledge that when we're in person, we would acknowledge wherever we are all together. But since we're not all together, I would like to acknowledge the land that I'm fortunate to be on right now. Okay, and thank you again for the wonderful introductions. You're going to get a chance to get to know each other better as we break into smaller groups. And but we'll continue with the program. Again, one of the key motivations for this workshop is that you all get to know what the Washington Tourism Alliance is doing at the state level for promoting and developing tourism. And so, Mike, I believe you said you're going to take the presentation, correct, to load this? So I will stop sharing. There you go. And turn it over to you and Dave to do a presentation on the Washington Tourism Alliance.
Go ahead, Dave.
Okay, good morning again, everyone. Really thrilled to have everyone here and see such a great turnout. And I just want to take a little time to introduce myself. Some of you do know me, some maybe not. Like Dan, I'm an old timer. I've been in the industry for a number of years, actually 25 years. The lion's share of my work was at Visit Seattle. In various roles, and during that time concurrently I also worked very extensively across the state. In fact, at a period of time way back in the 90s, had a contract to run press trips and do other work across the state, as well as help the state tourism office build their photo and video library and projects like that. I recall running press trips to this region, to Republic and Colville and Spokane, spent a lot of time there back in the 90s. And we're looking forward to resuming some programs and trying to build some business back here once we get out of the pandemic and get more into reopening. Dan was mentioning that he'd been involved with tourism advocacy and with the Washington Tourism Alliance for a number of years. Me too. Dan and I began right around the same time. In fact, it was exactly 10 years ago this June when the old state tourism office was closed by the legislature during the dark days of the economic recession. And the industry statewide mobilized and said, we are going to find a way to fund a statewide tourism marketing program. We know that we want it to be industry led. We don't want to return to it as a state agency, but rather the industry should drive it. And we set forth on an advocacy odyssey, if you will. Little did we know it would take many years, 7 years, in fact, to really drive some legislation through the legislature and to the governor's desk that would allow us to establish a new system. That system basically is a private-public partnership. It's a public-private match, a 2-for-1 match. So takes twice as much public support, cash in kind, to unlock the general funds from the state. It's a foot in the door. It's a chance at a very small level to really begin, and we've done that. Unfortunately, we're doing that amid the global pandemic, but it must be started, and we've made some really good momentum despite that challenge. As you may have been following, in addition to our base funding that was established in legislation in 2018, where we've also proposed a $12 million budget proviso of the legislature and feel we have some pretty good support. We're on pins and needles as we speak now. We're waiting to hear if that proviso remains in the budget and will be headed to the governor for signing. We think so, we hope so. We think that money is really critical over the next biennium to really grow and strengthen the programs we've started and to create some new ones as well. In the meantime, we're not waiting. It's the WTA way. Regardless of that, we are moving forward with programs. And Mike is going to elaborate and give you some details on a lot of what we're building. I might just kick us off here by talking about one that's really critical. It will be to reestablish a destination brand for Washington State, a tourism brand, if you will. It's been more than 10 years since one was created for the state. We've subsisted with the last one. And it's time to really look at our competitive position in the Western US, look at how the world sees us or doesn't see us, and begin to tell some new stories. And so we have retained a brand firm for the past several months. We've been working on a statewide stakeholder process. Some of you have been involved in that. We thank you for your voice. We're now amid a creative process with our agency, with our WTA team, and I think uncovering a really authentic brand that probably always existed, and we just need to find a way to really shine the spotlight on that and amplify that, using it as a platform for all of our marketing programs and communications programs. There will also be an output that is essentially a toolbox where all of you can use a lot of those messages and multimedia options as part of your marketing. We hope it will help you amplify. We know you have some specific messages as well, but we just want to be supportive and be in partnership with you. So look for details about that brand project in midsummer. We're just taking our time now to really go through what all of you have told us and lay the groundwork for the creative part of that brand. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Mike Moe, and there's much more to tell. And I think one of the first elements, and one that's concurrent with the brand, would be rebuilding our website, which also has subsisted for about a decade. So Mike, I'll turn it over to you, and say as well that I'm with you for a little bit here today, but we'll have to drop off here for a meeting pretty soon. So again, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Dave. And like Dave said, really that brand is kind of the platform that everything builds upon, including our consumer website. We've had experiencewa.com for about 10 years now. It's been a workhorse and it's done its job, but it's time to relaunch a completely new website. And so we're working with an organization called Tempest. You might know them if you've been working with Visit Spokane. They built the Visit Spokane website. And the cool thing about this is, it's going to be an inspirational consumer website, but also it'll have, as Dave alluded to, a industry side, where you'll be able to find research and that brand toolkit he was talking about. And there's some exciting parts of that, just a resource that you haven't had, in at least 10 years. And most other states have this, so it's very exciting that Washington will finally be able to have that resource. Just kind of what we've been up to in the last year. When the pandemic hit, we jumped into action. Obviously, we could not invite people to Washington State, so we developed a program called Show While Love, and it was a place where businesses from all over Washington State could highlight gift cards they have. And so we were encouraging Washingtonians to buy gift cards to their favorite businesses, and over 1,100 businesses signed up for this program. It was completely free to the business, and it was a very successful program, and gave us something to put our efforts towards over the last year. Right now, we're working on a Washington road trip website. Obviously, this summer is going to be a big road trip summer. And so we're highlighting tons and tons of different road trips all throughout Washington State, where people can look at different links and different activities, and really try to get people out there to do safe activities throughout Washington State in their car. As a part of that, we've launched the Explore Washington's Backyard program. This was supposed to kind of launch last summer, and there's been fits and starts just because of how the COVID orders have kind of shifted. It's been an interesting year to try to develop tourism, but this is a passport program that will again encourage people to participate in safe behavior, and they can actually win prizes and different experiences throughout the state. It's like an app, but it's actually a website. But you sign up, you register, and then you have hundreds of different things you can do throughout the state where you check in, and if you check into 5 or more, you start to win prizes. We've also been building our digital asset library. Last summer, we did a road shoot in Eastern Washington, a photo and video shoot, and we've been continuing that. We did one up in Whatcom County in the San Juan Islands. We've done one up and down kind of the I-5 corridor, including Long Beach. Really, when we took over from the state, we were left with nothing. And so we're building, our video and our photos up as a library. Because it really, even with the brand, all of our assets need to have this amazing imagery that we have throughout the state. COVID impact, obviously, you can see it was pretty devastating to our state, and I'm sure you guys all know that. And it's just really caused a lot of heartache, for the people who in our industry. And hopefully, though, we will start to engage in the recovery process, and that will be coming very soon. We've also been working in travel trade, representing Washington in different international trade shows. Obviously, that's been virtual the last year, but hopefully in the coming late summer, fall, that'll be going back to in person. And again, it's about bringing tour operators and bringing people here to our state. We're also going to be engaging in travel trade training for the state, for destination marketing organizations, for hoteliers, for anybody who wants to engage tour operators. And so look for that information. It'll be coming probably in May. And so it's just kind of a way to build sustainable long-term recovery for our state. And then that brings us to destination development, what we're working on today. And the one thing you should know, this is only the beginning. This is kind of the first step in the destination development process. Like Dan said, we're doing this workshop in all 11 regions, and we will be then moving on from that and building this program. We're going to be doing a program based on the Oregon Rural Tourism Studio starting in the fall, where regions can apply to have the studio in their region. And we'll be doing a series of 4 different workshops. It'll be kind of a main destination development workshop, and then you'll have 3 different options to choose kind of projects that you want to work on, and then there will be funding coming behind those projects to help build those projects up. So whether it's building your bicycle tourism, whether it's working on your waterways, there's lots of different options to where you can work on different projects in your region. And then we also have been engaging in some grant programs. The Department of Commerce has a couple of different programs for small businesses. And then here, got some people coming in here. It looks like my connection is a little unstable. Are you guys hearing me okay? No?
That last section, you were quite broken up, Mike.
Okay.
It was.
I'm sorry, guys. I don't know what's going on with my internet.
It would speed up and come back together, but just FYI.
Okay. Well, we're working on the destination development. There's a lot to come. I will work on my internet, and hopefully at the end of this meeting, I can go back into what's coming in destination development. For now, what I want to do is introduce Matt Lyons, and he is with TRED. And TRED is a really interesting group that we came across in another destination development meeting in the Trails and Lakes region, which is in north central Washington. And they have been working with land managers in that area to create an app that will give people real-time information on what's happening in trails and beaches and different activities. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Matt because I'm not sure if you guys are hearing me or not. So Matt, go ahead.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, my name is Matt Lyons again. I'm Executive Director of TRED. A little background on TRED. We formed this nonprofit organization about 3 years ago. We became official. And what we recognized here, Wenatchee, Chelan, Leavenworth area, Chelan County, was that everyone was kind of in silos. So we have some outdoor rec groups that are organized, it's like Evergreen Mountain Bike Alliance and row and paddle clubs and things like that. And then we have our land managers, Forest Service, DNR, state parks, you name it. But everybody was working separately and there wasn't a lot of collective collaboration and not a lot of efficiencies. So we decided that we would become the space between all of that. And our goal was just to enhance outdoor recreation for all. We define trails as anything that you play on outside. So it can be paved, dirt, water, snow. If you play outside, it's a trail. And we got together a group of ex officios to kind of help us and guide us through this process. So we took representation from all of these different groups. Right now we have about 50 ex officio members, and we get together quarterly and basically we discuss projects, and it's really fun in these meetings to watch it all come together. So what I learned was take lots of breaks because that's when the networking happens, right? Every time I would stop talking, people would get together. So the meetings are kind of fun. I kind of start off, everybody kind of introduces themselves like today, and then list the thing they're working on, and people get together and start to find efficiencies. And what actually happened was trails got better. So we would partner on projects and partner on grants, and all of a sudden a parking lot was getting bigger or needed a toilet or whatever that looks like. And as we grew in the last 3 years, we also came across an app developer who actually lives in Winthrop in Seattle. And he's been developing mapping apps for 20 years, but his kind of personal pet project was this idea that there's a better app out there that would give back to the local community and give back to those local recreation groups. And when we got together and met, it was like TRED and Dharma Maps just had this beautiful relationship because the app really meets the mission and vision of our organization, just in a digital form. So this started up, we launched the first version of the app in July during the pandemic, and to date have 2,000 local trail users that are using this thing. And what it does is it brings everyone together into one space. So it doesn't matter whether you ride a horse or you're a rock climber or you're a paddler, one space for all that information. And many of you recreate, I'm sure you do multiple things. And my source of information before would be to go to an app like Trail Forks for mountain biking. And what I found with that, those Stravas or Trail Forks, those apps are great for getting you to a place, but they also, land managers don't really like them very much because you can turn on a trail that doesn't exist. So if I ride my bike from the top of a mountain to the bottom and make my own trail, everyone else thinks that's a trail, and now people want to go do that too. So we had this kind of resource damage issue and things like that. Well, what our app does is it allows the land managers and those organized recreation groups to feed it from the back end. So it's authentic information, it's real time. And what's really exciting about it is, let's say you were out for a walk today and on your favorite trail, and there's a tree that's down. You can pull up the app right now, take a picture of the tree that's down, it knows where you are, and it sends it live to everyone. So now we all know that tree's down. So we have things like, in the springtime, the conditions are constantly changing. The trail's still covered in snow, or it's too muddy and we're going to do resource damage. We let people know if parking lots are full. We let people know that, hey, we saw some wildlife here. Maybe I saw a snake or something like that. And so as everyone is outside using this, it's informing everyone in real time. And it's really exciting. The other thing we did with the app was we created a community calendar, so that if there's a volunteer work party that's going on, or a fundraiser that's going on for a local group or a club, well, you probably have to be on their Facebook page already or part of their newsletter, and then you find out about those things and we go. This way we can find out about everybody's things in one place. So that's kind of exciting as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to share my screen real quick, and I'm going to talk to you about the update that I'm really excited about. Our land managers that we've been working with are finding real value in sharing information. So if there's a fire, they can immediately update the fire closure area. It shows on the map. It talks about which trails and trailheads have been affected. We have smoke sensors across the state that we're tapping into. So perhaps you and your family are going to go out for a day and you want to have some healthier air. You can decide to go to this canyon and maybe not this one. Things like that. We do avalanche warnings, tsunami stuff. So there's an alert feature. But what our land managers really asked us for, because of the pandemic, and if I could say there's one good thing that came out of it, it's that people went outside and they were healthy and they were happy and able to do something. Well, unfortunately, they all went to the same places and kind of overloved the areas. So, you know, in this slide, it looks very pristine and happy. I'm by myself on a trail and look how beautiful it is. And then this is what we saw during the pandemic, right? So there's some trail damage, there's garbage everywhere, parking issues, things of that nature. We've got lots of bad press. Land managers don't know what to do. They're asking for help. How do we educate all these new users that are coming out? And more importantly, maybe, how do we direct them to other areas that are less loved? So here's the app in web form. And what we're going to do is, let's say you picked your favorite trailhead there in the Ponderosa region, and it's one of those overloved trailheads. The land manager could actually have a window that pops up. Instead of giving you that trailhead information, it'll say, just so you know, from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., this place is packed. We have parking issues. You're going to run into hundreds and hundreds of people here. If you still want to come, go ahead. But we also suggest these 3 other areas, and this one's 0.5 miles away, and this one's 10 miles away, and this one's 20 miles away. So we can start to direct some of that new traffic into maybe some areas that aren't as popular. We're kind of excited about that new feature. I am going to stop right now because I can go into the app for days and tell you all the features. It filters by what you want to do. It filters by season, all kinds of good stuff. But I guess maybe, Mike, I'll just stop right here and take some questions.
That's great. And I'm going to keep my video off just so hopefully that'll help my glitching. But we are very excited about this app, and we are looking to support TREAD throughout the Trails and Lakes region, and see how it goes, and hopefully, you know, bring it statewide. So this is just something that we wanted you all to be aware of, and one of the initiatives that the WTA is working on. And if anybody has any questions for Matt, feel free to chime in now.
And just from a flow perspective, that's why we brought Matt in at this point at the tail end of the WTA updates, because as Mike said, this is an example of by WTA getting out into the community, the grassroots effort of when we did our Trails and Lakes workshop. We learned about TREAD. Everybody was excited about it in that region for those people who hadn't heard about it. And then it was made aware at the state level, and could this be a resource for other places in other regions in the state. And so that's an example of what a healthy statewide tourism organization can do. And Ginger, it looks like you have your hand up, and I'd love to have you speak.
Awesome, thank you. I really loved your presentation, Matt, and actually some of the things that you talked about really reminded me of our own organization and some of the impetus and why we are working on art and creativity in Spokane. So thank you for educating me. I'm super excited. I've been a part of a conversation since the pandemic, led by John Snyder, who is, I can't remember his official title, but he works for the governor. I'm sure you're probably well aware of him, given your work, about communities of color not feeling welcome on trailheads, and specifically in the wilderness across Washington state. And I'm just curious, are y'all aware of that? What is some of the work around that you're doing some of the work around that you're doing, because it is apparently, obviously, a big issue if we're talking about equity in these conversations.
For sure. And my board actually did a lot of work on some inclusion and equity for the organization, and we're trying to get as much of that word out through the app as possible. What I love about where I live, we're about 50% Hispanic Latino population. And so Spanish is a big deal here. And, you know, I don't know how well signed the trails are over there, but over here, we're missing some signs, even in English. And so by having this app and this ability to share this digitally, you have signage in your pocket. One of the things that we do with these alerts that you can see here, if I share my phone here, yep, there we go. So the Chelan County PUD, the Forest Service, they'll make these alerts, but we also have them in Spanish and English. As we develop and move across the state, if that starts to happen, we'll need to have other language added to this, obviously. But we're really trying to highlight people that are out. So we've built in a trip report feature to this as well. So as you go out and have a good time, you can upload in kind of a TikTok-y feel, not only the conditions that are out there, but also pictures from your trip. So people can see you and your family and your friends, and they're out. And so we're encouraging people to share that way. So there's a lot of hashtagging and just trying to get that message out there. It's a start. We do a lot of work with my organization part to bring in groups. Like we have a group here called Team Naturaleza, and they really focus on the Hispanic community and really spreading the message of how to recreate responsibly, inviting people out. They do guided trips and tours. And so that's really, that message is, let's get outside and you are welcome. And we love to see you out here. So as an organization, having that collective impact, we can start to find those groups that are working on that wonderful process, right? And then we'll just try to highlight it as much as possible and spread the word. Confluence Health and CVCH are two of our large medical installations here in Wenatchee. And there's some legislation right now about Park RX, where doctors can prescribe you to go for a hike or go for a walk. And so our doctors here are like, hey, if we start prescribing hikes and walks to people, they can use the app. They can actually map their routes. They can come back and show me, look, doc, I'm doing the work, right? And so that goes across language barriers and across culture. That's just health, and everybody needs to be healthy. So we're trying to do that as well. I don't know if that answers your question.
Matt, could you, I had the pleasure of watching this yesterday. Could you talk about how it's going to activate with small businesses as well? I thought that was really an important part of it. And I think everybody would love to hear that as well.
Yes, for sure. Thank you for that prompt. As we grow and move this idea across our region, the chambers I'm finding are super excited. So they see this as a way to not only encourage people to come to my smaller communities, maybe I've driven through, maybe some of the route finding that WTA is starting to promote, but also how do we highlight these businesses? Because we've created this idea that this app is not about making money and getting advertising to just pay us money. If you want to advertise on this app, you actually have to have a trail story as a business. And so I'll show you a feature of that real quick. So we can turn on our partners, and you see this Icicle Brewery here in Leavenworth. They pop up. So I want to know more about them. So when I hit that thing, here they are on the bottom, and I go to their story. So they can highlight their business, but right here, we're purposely spending your dollar. So as a tourist, you might come and enjoy the trails and play really hard and have a great day, but you're probably not going to pick up a shovel and help with trail maintenance. You are probably going to go spend some money in town. So we're going to encourage you to go to the businesses that already support trails. And then here's their story. They donate tons of money to local trail organizations. They donate to organized groups, and they help with the community. So when you go buy a beer from here, you can rest assured that part of your dollar is going to go back to the local trails you just played on. So we're really excited about that from a tourism perspective. From a business perspective, we'll send them to you. So here are the directions, here's their phone call, here's links to their website. If they want to offer a discount, they can do that. So you could walk in with your phone and say, I saw this on the app, can I get my 10%? And then I can share it with my friends on social media. We also developed a spot where, as I zoom in here on a trail, one of our local businesses wanted to adopt this trail. This trail is called For the Boys. It was named after 4 gentlemen that died in an avalanche. And it's a really popular trail around the Leavenworth area. But as you can see at the bottom of the screen right here, there's a little A sneaking in right here. Well, that's Arlberg Sports, and that's the name of that business. So they've actually attached their business to that trail because it's so popular, and they'd like to get the word out. And then when you click on Arlberg Sports, it brings up their story again and all those features. So what we're trying to do is this circle of tourism dollar coming back to local communities. As we build this up and more revenue comes in, people are asking us, well, I want to be a part of this, but I don't have a trail story. How do I get a trail story? Well, what a great problem to have, right? Now we have businesses asking how they can support local trails. So this idea of a 1% for the planet is nothing new, but we're going to do 1% for local trails. So as we bring in region-wide money, then that money goes back in revenue sharing to a group like a TRED or whatever they're called in that region. That's a kind of a collective impact group. And then they get to push that money to trail enhancements, capital projects. We're kind of trying to disrupt how trails get built and done. So no longer are you desperate for one grant and maybe you get it, or waiting 2 years for a cycle. This is just revenue sharing and giving back. At the end of the day, we want to give back. We want to enhance our local trails and our local communities. And then from a Washington tourism perspective, more people want to come to Washington State because everything's getting better community by community, right? So it's just a cycle. Does that answer your question?
All right. Well, thank you, Matt, for that presentation. And this is just a really exciting project that we've been working on. And it's there's much more to come on TRED. And so I'm going to go ahead and throw it back to Dan, and we'll get back to destination development.
Awesome. Thank you. And thanks for the good questions. I think this is sharing now. You guys see that? Mike?
Yep, you're good to go.
Okay, and that's Matt's email address. Matt, I hope that's okay that I'm telling everybody your email. And again, so the motivation there was, this was something that came out of this type of a workshop, and I'm sure that there will be some similar types of, wow, isn't this great that this is happening in the Ponderosa region of Washington State, and we should be bringing this at the statewide level or connecting other regions to some of the work that you all are doing. And so we just wanted to showcase that as one of the success stories. Next, in the spirit of getting people to share and learn more about what's happening in your own region, we'd like to invite folks who are representatives of local DMOs and chambers of commerce and other organizations that are promoting and developing tourism in this region to jump in now and just give a brief update as to what initiatives you're working on especially gearing up for what will probably be a much different summer than last summer. So Mike, maybe I'll turn it over to you just to point out some of the folks that are on this call that we can put on the spot to say a few words.
Yes, well, Meg, I'm sure you can give a little update on just what's happening in Spokane.
I'd be happy to, and I'm going to defer. I've got a couple of our great, well, quite a few of our great partners on this call as well. So I'm just going to start with what we're doing, and I'm going to let them lift up. I'll ask Alicia Benson and Lance Beck to say a few words as well. And then Mayor Wick and Mayor Kaminskis, if they're available. But what we've been able to do through, we were very, very fortunate. Our county commissioners allocated directly to Visit Spokane $2.5 million last year for outbound rubber reel, basically leisure visitation. Our team did an amazing job of putting together our campaign Room to Roam, which is currently continuing. And we targeted the west side. We were looking at analytics as we went through it and saw that people were traveling mainly from the west side and Portland, which was actually a new market for us. We had never seen a large leisure base from the Portland market, but that changed drastically during COVID. So our team and with all of our local partners just did an amazing job with media in all aspects. So we're continuing with that. We have that running through May. We were able to leverage some of those dollars. And as we move forward, we're going to be looking at asking for additional dollars so that we can keep that consistency, that front of mind, that ability to dream about Spokane as we move forward through this. As we all well know, outdoors has been the most widely used in our region. As we have moved through COVID and as we move forward, anything from definitely our trail systems to our golf courses to our parks and all of that. So we are going to continue to lift that up and continue our safety message, because we know that that has been the main kind of question and metric that everyone is looking for as they move forward. So as we move through this, we're continuing to do that. Conventions are starting to come back, which we're excited about. And we're finding that our conventioneers are looking for the same things as our leisure visitors are as well. So that message is going to translate over much more than it has in the past. You know, we concentrated almost on two different levels. We looked at the leisure traveler, we looked at the conventioneer. But people are starting to give out. People are starting to come to conventions, and they're spending front or back, you know, pre and post in your destination. And so that's so important. But one thing that's come through this with us is we came together of quite a few of our nonprofits supporting the business community came together and started a collaboration. And that's one of the reasons I mentioned Lance. I mentioned Alicia at the very beginning of this. We came together to lift up both internally and externally. And I'd love to defer to them to say a few words. And I'd love if Dean Feldmeyer, as our chair of Visit Spokane, had anything to say. So Alicia, are you, I can't see if you're on still.
I am. Good morning.
I would love you to say a few words and then possibly Lance.
Yeah, well, I think, thank you. And this has been excellent. I'm glad to be not driving in a car so I can add on. I think one of the things I think has just been really important, both in survival mode through the past year, and then also the go forward, is having the ability across the tourism and visitor platform, the local business community and stabilization, and then one of our charges is how are we thinking about recruiting businesses and growing businesses here in the region, and this idea of how we build off of those assets. And one of the things that I have held on very dearly since I've had the opportunity to work with Meg is the fact that everyone comes to our community first as a tourist. And so as we're looking at how we ramp back up our business kind of recruitment efforts and expansion efforts, and the next phase of COVID recovery, the work of the Room to Roam campaign and the work of Visit Spokane as our DMO is really critical to that. And so we are in kind of parallel path of planning around some business recruitment activity, utilizing our regional platform called Advantage Spokane that our cities and counties and other partners on the call are part of. all of that ties and dovetails with the work of Room to Roam. And so the work that Visit Spokane has been able to do during this pandemic, but also the work they're doing right now as people are having a greater increased confidence to begin to travel regionally becomes really important for our leveraging the work from recruiting businesses and remote workers and those kinds of things to our community. And so it's, and for Spokane, it's been a long time since we've worked this, I think, coordinated and being able to utilize the data and the intelligence that our DMO is able to gather around how people are moving and coming to make our efforts for recruiting businesses smarter. And so looking forward to the work ahead and some targeting of specific regions that are looking at Spokane as part of our business development efforts that dovetail along with their visitor and tourism aspects as well. And then I don't know, Lance, if you want to add anything from your perspective.
Good morning, everybody. I would say Alicia stole the thunder on the collaborative nature of it, but rather than, I think I would defer to Mayor Wick and Mayor Kaminskis for the Valley. We have quite a few projects that are tourism related that are going to be coming up here and are going to be focuses within the community. And so we as the Valley Chamber will be supporting those projects to get them to the build stage. And so I'll let we'll maybe defer to Mayor Kaminskis out in Liberty Lake to start, and then Mayor Wick to talk about those, and then I can fill in on I'll be the color commentator at the end here.
I don't honestly have a lot to add. Liberty Lake, we're a whopping 6 square miles. Our focus right now is more economic development and getting some of our infrastructure projects going. Our tourism, if you want to call it that, really focuses more on the golfing aspect of Liberty Lake, and we try to focus on that. And of course, we only have half of a course out of the 2.5 that we have. So things, based on the current numbers, things are going gangbusters as usual with the great dry weather. But yeah, I don't honestly have a whole lot to add at this point. So I'll defer to Ben. They're much bigger.
Sure. So we've had a number of different things. We've actually kind of been on a journey for figuring out what assets we have and destination or kind of developments that we want to do. And so we've been actually in the study for probably 4 or 5 years, and we're kind of getting down to the end of what assets are missing and where we want to invest our capital side of things. So one of the things that we looked at was the river. I mean, we have the great Spokane River that goes through the heart of our community, but we didn't really have any assets that showed that off. And so we kind of trying to figure out how we can utilize the river a little bit better. We have the Centennial Trail. We actually, through the pandemic, were able to pick up another 40-acre parcel right along the river. And so have some kind of fly fishing opportunities, maybe some whitewater rapid opportunities along there. And so we're trying to figure out how we could develop that. From that has also kind of spurred a loop trail. I know kind of the Wenatchee area has a beautiful loop trail there. So we're working on a 10-mile river loop trail, possibly with some suspension bridges and things of that nature. So we're kind of putting these things together from an asset development side of things and looking to maximize our capital investments. So that's where the city is kind of focusing our efforts to try and figure out how we can leverage grant opportunities or get some of these things built. So Spokane Valley, we're actually been a city, and similar to Liberty Lake, we're fairly new cities. And so we're kind of figuring out the territory for us a little bit more and kind of putting some emphasis in our region. So we have the River Loop Trail, the new 40-acre park that we're talking about there along the river. We also talking about our local convention or the Fair and Expo Center. So trying to get some revitalization there and some new capital investment to better utilize that facility as well. And so we're just kind of really focused on the capital side of things. Also, I guess I should talk about sports. We have a Plants Ferry Park, which has a great number of soccer fields, and trying to figure out how we can incorporate some softball or something of that nature. That's been a big drive from the community. So multi-prong effort, I guess you could say, but really kind of focused on those capital developments for our assets. And we also did, right, kind of as the pandemic started, as a region, we actually went back to our TPA and tried to raise those funds to get some more funding for marketing for our area too. So really supportive of that. Didn't really have the effect that we wanted, but at least it gave us a little bit more to help us get through COVID.
I'll fill in on the back. As a community-based organization, we are really excited about the development chances we have on the loop trail, having a standalone 10-mile loop off-road mirroring that trail with the Centennial Trail will add another facet to the Centennial Trail system overall. I know the city of Spokane is working on some adjustments to the Centennial Trail to get some of the last remaining stages that are surface road combination off-road and into their own independent trail to help make that truly 40 miles of uninterrupted off-road trail. And then the chance of a whitewater park out in Spokane Valley, I can't stress the acquisition of the land that the city of Spokane Valley did, the opportunity that presents us with for a multitude of options to utilize that space very early in that planning process, but to have the ability to bring something like you would see in a Bend or a Missoula, to bring an element like that to Spokane County is truly unique. And then from a commercial stance, we do have a couple projects in the works. You all are aware of a major golf type venue that is a fun bar golfing combination type of activity. We are very much still in the process of trying to bring that to the community, and I do think that has a really high chance of coming to fruition here. And so that would be really, really exciting to have that venue meet Spokane County. And then some development. If you're familiar with Visit Spokane's work with Lime Scooters, they've got the Scoot Spokane standalone campaign that they partner with Lime. We at the Valley Chamber are working with Lime right now to bring the Scoot Spokane to the Spokane Valley, where we've recently added scooters. We also have an urban trail in Spokane Valley called the Appleway Trail that we just opened a large section of trail last year. And working on that right now, the exciting thing that we're trying to pull off is some trail and business operations. So extending the business from the Sprague Avenue street side of things to also have frontages along the trail to bring in a little more urban. You ride your bike right up, pull it off the patio and park at the brewery and have a drink, and then maybe don't have too many drinks, but get back on your bike and continue down the trail to have lunch somewhere else. And so that's a really cool new asset we have. And I know the city's got plans to continue extending that in another phase here coming up as well. And then hopefully, as we look at the new Kramer overpass coming into play out in Liberty Lake, we can make our own loop out of the Appleway Trail and the Centennial Trail in that capacity too. So, and then Lime is also interested. We're talking about working with council and city staff out in Liberty Lake to do some test piloting of Lime, if we can get that approved out there as well. So just continuing their extension of services within the county as well. So that's what I would say. I have a huge passion, just quick plug on tourism. I came from Newport, Oregon, where I worked in tourism. And so while I put my business focused chamber hat on here, anytime there's a tourism discussion, Meg knows she can easily get my attention, and I'll go squirrel and go full tilt in the tourism, because obviously a longstanding passion for the industry. And it really does. People are visitors before they're residents, and hopefully if we show them a good enough time, they'll decide to move here, start a business, and become part of our community. So thanks for having us on the call today.
Thank you, Lance. I want to hear from Shelly Stevens.
Sure. Thanks, Mike. So I will say, so up here in Northeast Washington, Ferry Stevens, Ponderosa, we have a long history of outdoor rec as being one of our primary economic drivers, and also a long history of collaborative efforts, some that have kind of shown us in good stead lately with all the COVID stuff. New Start, Northeast Washington Sustainable Tourism and Recreation Team, which I know is close, near and dear to Craig Newman's heart, so I'll let him elaborate on that at some point. But that's been around for a decade. We partner with all sorts of different trail users and land managers. Several projects have come out of that collaboration, including our Northeast Washington Trails website. which is hundreds of trails. And we've recently partnered with the Pacific Northwest Scenic Trail Association to host their trail stewardship page and trail reporting and things like that. And then most recently, well, maybe the last year and a half, New Start kind of spearheaded with Craig's help the Northeast Washington Trail Strategy. And this covers all of our 3 counties, as well as a portion of Okanagan and a portion of Bonner County in Idaho. And it's truly collaborative because we're creating this planning document with all of the land management. You know how it is if you're on a national forest trail and now you don't know if this is BLM or DNR or what the status is, and it's hard to keep that cohesive. So we're coming up with this planning document with everybody's input. And again, I'll let Craig pop in whenever and update that. In our area, we're fortunate to have the Pacific Northwest Scenic Trail come through all 3 counties, and also Bike Route 10. So biking and cycling are a huge thing here. And we've also, as far as kind of business, more business promotion lately, we have started a kind of a project called Open for Business. We're doing some advertising, some radio spots, some signage to remind people that no matter what phase we're in, our businesses are open, be they tourism related or not. So it's very exciting to see all of this collaboration come to fruition. So I think that's kind of my update. I don't know, Craig, do you want to elaborate on New Start and things?
That was great update, Shelley. And I don't know why you keep giving nods to me. It's really long. They've really helped convene our economic development, tourism, recreation interests together with our land managers and others to collaborate on some of the planning and projects that Shelley talked about. One of the best examples we have this, and we have a lot of Chuwila people represented on this call today, is the Chuwila area recreation planning effort. This all hands, all lands approach to really developing recreation and tourism opportunities in the Chuwila area that are going to be playing out here soon and in the years to come. So it's really exciting to see that kind of development come out of New Start and Tri-County Economic Development efforts. Shelley did say we're expanding to start to include Okanagan County, but I could see us really doing a lot more work in the future, collaborating with TRED. I think we have a lot to learn from TRED and what they've learned in their development, and I'm excited about their app. I think largely where New Start goes in the future is really determined by those people that show up at the table, probably much like TRED. If you're there, you're going to be able to help shape where we go in our region. And so really, I encourage as many people to come together at our monthly meetings and share what's going on, get that networking going, because it can really create some great things. Shelley, you've done some great work and did a really good update. So let's keep a good thing going.
All right. If there's anybody else who wants to give a brief update, that'd be great. Speak now.
This is Sonia with the Ponderosa Region Tourism Alliance in Ponderosa County and northern Idaho, northwestern Idaho. Could I speak to our collaborative efforts within the community, not so much what the tourism promotion is, because it's pretty much, it seems like pretty much everyone's doing the same thing, but how tourism promotion can also tie in agritourism, voluntourism, community calendars, etc.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Unfortunately, I live in an area where I cannot run video and talk together at the same time a lot. So I was wondering if maybe I could share my screen.
Sure. And just so you know, I live in Seattle, and apparently I can't I can't have my video on and talk at the same time. So it happens to everybody.
It does actually make me feel better. That does actually make me feel better. So this is my screen showing? Because it's not showing for me.
It's showing.
Oh,
Yep,
fantastic.
I see it.
Okay. All right, so this is the Ponderosa Region Tourism Alliance screen, and it is porta.us. Right on our homepage, we have commercials. And I would like to actually give the initial stakeholders meeting credit for these commercials, 100%. Because at that meeting a few months ago, or maybe it was a year ago, I don't know, the months are kind of running together, but I learned that a lot of the counties in the eastern side of the state had the same levels of tourism, but the businesses were not receiving tourism traffic because people thought rural America had shut down. And that was 100% what I learned from my little foot on the ground, boots on the ground, polling the campgrounds and hotels and stuff, because I actually do that. I actually go and make cold calls. My sales background kind of forces me to do that. And it was the same thing. They did not realize that our restaurants were open for to-go orders. They did not realize that our grocery stores were still operating, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So learning that in that stakeholders meeting, we launched a 12-month campaign of commercials on Me TV. KXLY happened to have a 50% off deal. So that's what we did. And every time that these commercials run, they focus on either a specific business that is at the highest level of membership in Porta, because as an all-volunteer nonprofit, we have a lot of funding problems, which is something I'm hoping to learn from this meeting, is how to bring in additional money. But we're either focusing on a specific event, or we're focusing on outdoor tourism and how it relates to a business. And every time that these commercials run, our website traffic just skyrockets, our subscriptions skyrocket, subscribing to newsletters, and the businesses that are featured notice a huge uptick. And then unfortunately also a downtick when the commercials are over, because out of sight, out of mind, I guess. But these commercials are a direct result of that stakeholder meeting. And so I really appreciate whoever put that together. That was a fantastic idea. I learned a lot. That's pretty much it. Obviously, just like everybody else here, I could talk forever about Porta, but I just wanted to show that it is actually possible for a tourism entity to really be part of that conversation for driving development. And thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Sonia.
I'll figure out how to stop sharing my screen.
Yeah, no problem. I can do that for you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. So again, a key aspect here is making sure that folks across the region know what's going on. And I think that is something we learned for several years, that when the statewide tourism office, which shut down, as Dave Blanford pointed out, about 10 years ago, the first thing that we learned from people is that they lost the opportunity to make some of those cross-region connections. And so that's why one of the first initiatives that WTA is working on is this tourism development work. And meetings like this are really crucial to make sure that people know what's going on across your region. And sometimes it feels like you can be working really hard, and people who would benefit knowing what's going on aren't always aware. So I'm really excited that that's happening here in this meeting. We're going to keep moving on here. We've got a lot to cover today, but thank you for sharing all that. Let me see here. I think that's working again. Okay, so we've talked quite a bit about this Ponderosa region, and I keep saying things like across the region, and there are 11 regions in Washington state. So these are 11 regions that have been defined based upon geography, based upon historical collaborations in tourism, and also from an outward to out of state message to the rest of the world, ways that can quickly define a region. And so as we just found out, there are lots of things going on within the whole region that isn't necessarily all working at the same time on the same initiatives. And so a key objective here is to get folks more aligned, not necessarily to abandon any of their initiatives that they want to keep doing, but to find mutual projects and mutual objectives to work on across the region. And so again, there are 11 regions identified throughout the state that are working in this exact same way. And we're holding the same workshop more or less in all of those regions. And it will be helpful to know what's happening next door to you in the Trails and Lake, and what's happening in southeastern Washington as well. So thinking along all the information that you just heard from Washington Tourism Alliance, all of what you just heard from representatives who work in tourism throughout your region, what I would love for you to do now, and this is where we get to stop being in a large group and start working in a smaller group, is I'd like for you to think about the characteristics that unite the entire region. Again, you all have your communities and your unique aspects, and those are wonderful. Are there characteristics that you think personally unite the whole region as a whole? And within your small group, discuss what tourism looks like currently in the Ponderosa region. So again, some of that will be smaller level because that's what's currently happening. But is there tourism that's happening across the entire region that you can also draw upon? And then in your small group, you will choose the top 3 that you'd like to share with the entire group. So once again, just give you, in case you weren't aware of how Washington Tourism Alliance is defining your region, these are obviously not every town and community is listed here. There's a lot more that can fit on this larger map. But Mike is going to work the magic of Zoom to break you into smaller groups. It will be completely random. So it's slightly possible you could be with people from your same organization and in your same town, but that's not totally likely. And again, the key objective here is what are the characteristics that unite the entire region, and what does tourism look like in that region right now? You might want to take a photo of this with your phone, because unfortunately I cannot share this part of the screen into every single group. And so it's happened where people get in the small groups and they completely have no idea what they were supposed to do. So at least one person hopefully will have a photo of this. Mike, I'll turn it over to you to provide the opportunity to put people in the small groups. Looks like you're already doing that. Thank you. So hit join and we'll see you in the small groups. All right, great. So hopefully it was useful for you to realize, wow, there's some really cool people here that maybe I didn't know, or you got to spend some quality time with people you already do know. That's fine too. And we'd love to hear back from a couple of the different rooms and hear, is there anything, was this difficult to find unifying characteristics throughout this very diverse region, or were there some things that just jumped out immediately and like, wow, of course this is what's unifying this region? We could totally market that. Who would like to go first? Any groups that would like to go first? Rosemary, I see your hand first.
I was in a group with Trish, who owns Loon Lake Distillery, which is a very close neighbor of mine, as well as Stephanie Sims, I think it was, and then Matt Lyons. Stephanie Sims works with the Scenic Byway. But the thing that we all came up with together were outdoor recreation for all seasons is something that this whole region really has amazing access to and quick access to. It's just right out our front doors. So that's a really awesome thing that we can tap into. There's skiing, biking, hiking, boating, you know, kind of all those trail type things that Matt is talking about. And that outdoor rec is because of our natural resources that we have available. Another thing that we talked about is this idea of rural and rural communities and how that's kind of a real positive right now, especially with the pandemic and so many people kind of migrating to the rural and working remotely in these rural communities. The rural communities also have these mom and pop, really unique local businesses, and those local businesses, there's no other business like it. I'd say in Colville, we have two kind of, big box store type places, but mostly it's all community run, community businesses, and those are things that we can really capitalize on. Another asset that we talked about a little bit is the tribes and the resources that they have and how you can kind of collaborate with them and utilize those resources as well. So those were kind of our key things that we discussed.
Excellent. Yeah, very few people travel halfway across the world to go to a chain store, and those unique, as you said, mom and pop stores and restaurants are awesome, and they're also really deserve our support as well. And so I think that's where coming together as a wider community can make sure that those stores and those businesses can thrive, especially since it's been such a tough year. It's going to need our support even more, some of them. Very good points. Thank you, Rosemary. Sharon, I think you had your hand up earlier. Is that correct?
I did. And I was going to say quite a bit of the same thing she said with the outdoor and the four season. One thing that we had Leslie from the Spokane Valley and Derek, and he's from Cheney. But the thing that we found is that we felt that we had communication within little groups, but for tourism, for them to come and find out if they're in Spokane, to find out the things that are north or the things that are out into the west, easily, that we needed to coordinate that information on websites or on apps so that they kind of cross. So if you want to know about theater, or if you want to know about the lakes, or if you want to know about trails or anything, that there's some coordination there. And we just felt that was a need that we have in our area.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. Who else would like to jump in and share something that they learned? And Sharon, I appreciate you saying, first off, there was some overlap, and that, of course, is exciting to hear, that because there's no guarantee that every group's going to say similar things, but it kind of proves the point that there is a lot in common when the first two groups have things that they both brought up. Who would like to jump in? You can either wave your hand like this, or you can do the hand raise thing on the Zoom platform.
Yeah, I think we were in a room with Mayor Wick from Spokane Valley, myself and Dan. And one of the things that doesn't overlap that was discussed was just ease of access to the rural communities from the metro hub for us. And then that, I think a unique part for us is that our area has a metro hub. So if you're looking at this as a whole, a lot of people do travel to Spokane County as a step for the city of Spokane, Spokane Valley's amenities. And so when we look at us as a region and our draw where we're pulling from, we do have access to that commercial hub, but then the ability to quickly get out into the rural community without having to fight traffic, without going through that process that may be frustrating for somebody visiting a Seattle market or even a Portland, Vancouver market, has to deal with that as a separator. You can feel like you're in a metro, but then be away from it pretty quickly.
Yeah, excellent. And we also just highlighted that synergy between an urban area having in its backyard incredible not urban areas and vice versa. And so a region that contains both and learning how to harness each other's strengths for both tourism development as well as eventual marketing, I think is a key point as well. Any other groups wanted to jump in and share something that they discovered? Did anyone say there's absolutely nothing that connects this region? Were there any really hard people to facilitate?
This is Craig. I'll join in from my group of Shelley, Ginger, Ron, and Mike. And I inadvertently, I think I posted R3 to the chat, so you can kind of look at them and follow along with me. You know, we thought that our the rivers of the Upper Columbia, whether it be the Spokane, the Ponderosa, or pretty much all of the rivers that drain into the Columbia, really connect our region and our tribes through time. So that's something I think that's unique to our area, that also connects all of us. We talked about the farm to table, the great agriculture that we have here, the flourishing culinary scene that we have in a lot of areas, and you know, a lot attributed to kind of that diverse fish and game and farming and ranching that we have in our area. Then the third theme we talked about was the amazing arts and architecture in Spokane, in our rural communities and elsewhere, our historic buildings, barns, and our thriving art scene have really kind of are great highlights for our area.
That's great. Definitely love the agritourism. I think hopefully you all saw the note that Mike put in the chat earlier in the meeting about a grant that's happening with a partnership with the Washington Department of Agriculture for agritourism. So for those of you engaged in that work, or if you know people, it's a quick turnaround, but it's a really great opportunity to help jumpstart some of those, or help continue to support some of those agritourism businesses in your region. And again, just to kind of reinforce the point here, the point is that at the state level, Washington Tourism Alliance is set up to market the whole state. And so by having regions that are tied together, that are quite diverse, but still share some characteristics, some story, some geography, some nature, some culture, that message can be amplified through the efforts with the Washington Tourism Alliance. And so the efforts that you all do to coordinate across that region and build that bigger story that can live at that level, the more success you will see from that. And so that's kind of the point of this conversation. So, and we're going to be talking more about that. We're going to take a break here as our next, unless if there's other people I'm not seeing hands up or who wanted to jump in. Oh yeah, please. Okay.
So we actually agreed with Lance on, our phrase was, thanks to Mike, is rural by choice. So 1 hour can get you anywhere. So it's nice to have the hub. We're the kind of 1 hour destination. And even in Colville, then you can go 1 hour in any direction and hit anything. Then we kind of dove the other direction. We feel like we all have a volunteer issue. We have the same volunteers. We have a small volunteer pool. We maybe don't have unity and coordination or how to coordinate volunteers. So we're all kind of going rogue out there and trying to make up our own rules. And part of that is due to the fact that we don't have the funding to build capacity. So like some of us out there have trailheads where we've laminated pieces of paper and have it there. Or we don't actually have trailheads. They're in the middle of a neighborhood and people are just kind of parking because if you're local, you know that's the spot you park. So, you know, coordinating and getting that up. And then we just brought up two issues that we see a lot in the Spokane area, maybe not so much on the first one, but for us, it's broadband. People think their phones are going to work up here. They go out to hike and they can't download their maps. They can't connect to their app. They can't find where they're going. And then the other thing that even Meg agreed with on Northeast Washington, we're kind of a Caucasian destination. And especially up here in at least Stevens County and Ferry County, we're not really marketing to a diverse audience. And Meg brought up a great point that, you know, she knew that there was a group that Black people that hike. So it's like she knew there was this walking group and they could reach out to it. And I don't think we're just on the cusp of doing that type of work, some of us in the more rural outreach communities. Sonia's area is doing some good work on it, but I think it's just an area that we all need to expand on. And I wish there was one solution and we could just fix it, but it's going to take a lot of work. So.
Wow, incredible insight. And so several of the points that you brought up, and I believe it's Aidania, right? Am I pronouncing it correctly? That you brought up, especially this last point, I think is why having a statewide entity that is helping to coordinate getting people around the table as we are today and having conversations, coordinating, funneling funding that exists that communities like yours should be able to have access to. And by organizing like this, we now might have access to, but also highlighting issues that every other region in Washington state, I would probably say around our country, are dealing with. And so can we tackle some of these challenges at the statewide level while not forgetting that these are unique, that there's unique components at the regional and rural level as well. So I think specifically your point about welcoming and challenges, barriers that people face for accessing our communities. I think there's future workshops, there's future initiatives that could be done at the statewide level, but because you bring them up at the grassroots level, they're more powerful. So again, several of the points you brought up, I think you're not the only communities that are dealing with it, but it's more powerful that it's coming from your community. And I know that Mike's frantically taking notes to make sure that we capture that and we bring that to the bigger level. So thank you for sharing that. Okay. Again, I want you to have the time to speak, but I also don't necessarily want to keep you from taking your 15-minute break. So if there's other people, please jump in.
One thing I want to mention, and I apologize, I'm having connectivity issues today, and but there is a lot of information that I want to send to you. I don't want to take time here, but what I'll do is I'll follow up with an email with a recorded version of this presentation, and then some of the information that you may have missed in my glitchy presentation. So.
Okay, so we will take a 15-minute break. It is 10 a.m. more or less. So 10:15, please come back, do all the important break things you need to do. And again, thank you so much for this initial discussion. And there's a lot more to be done when we come back in 15 minutes. Thanks, everybody. So the next section here is basically, so now that you have an idea of who's in the region, who's out there already doing the work, and maybe you didn't know already, and have some idea about how to think about this as a region-wide storytelling and vision that you're creating. What I'd like to do now is spend just a little bit of time on the what is possible. So again, with Washington Tourism Alliance organizing at the state level and providing some funding for destination development and training and other initiatives, as well as connecting the dots to other funding like the agritourism that's coming through the Washington Department of Agriculture. And so now seeing that some of that's in the pipeline, having starting to plant some seeds for what you want to do into the future. So the first question or a couple of questions might come to mind for you in the course of this workshop so far. So the first is, what is destination development? Is it something that you have heard of before, that you've participated in? I know some of you have been working in tourism for a while, so I'm sure you have, but maybe people who are newer to tourism haven't heard that term before. And then, why is a marketing organization doing this work? And so Washington Tourism Alliance is technically a marketing organization. It's a destination marketing organization. And so the question has come up along the formation of the WTA, whether this is appropriate work for an organization like that to do. So to answer the first question, I found on the the Utah Tourism organization's website a definition that I thought was quite concise that fits here. So any activity that increases and improves the quality of a visitor's experience in a travel destination. And so I think that is key to think about, that we are developing a destination for travelers from outside the region to come, and in order for them to provide some economic benefits, some cultural exchange, all the reasons you may choose to welcome tourists and travelers into your community. Well, they're going to need something to do and something to engage with, and if it's economically beneficial to your community, there needs to be something that they can spend money on. And then the other key reason to think about destination development, I found from Sustainable Travel International, which is an international group that focuses on sustainable tourism. And left unchecked, tourism growth and development can harm the destinations that we love. And I think a lot of our conversation about some of the outdoor recreation really points to this, but there's so many other ways that tourism, when not managed, when not planned, when not part of a community-led vision, can be detrimental and lead to people in the community not excited about tourism. And so I think we're in an era in tourism where certainly we still want to make sure our lodging partners are earning money, because we know that people who stay overnight in a destination spend more. But it's not just about heads and beds now when we're thinking about developing a destination. And so I think that's where this type of work, where you all are here having this conversation, and it's just the beginning of this work, and these conversations give you an opportunity as a community to determine, what do you want tourism to look like in your region? What's not happening now? How do we get there? And that's a big focus of what this workshop is about. So there will be another small group activity, but it's going to first be a one group activity, which is you in yourself listening to me give a few case studies from regions that I thought have some similarities to yours. And then at the end of that, you'll break into smaller groups and have a conversation about were there any aspects of these three case studies that are relevant to your community that you think? Are there anything that you learned or observed that you're like, wow, that's cool, we should try and do that in the Ponderosa region? So I'll show this slide up again before we break out into groups, so you don't have to memorize this yet, but I wanted to set it up first before you hear the case study, so you have some idea of some of the things that I'm hoping that you would pay attention to. So unless if there's any announcements from Mike or anybody else, I'm just going to dive right in here. So the first case study I'd like to share is a region that I've visited and done a little bit of work up in Quebec. It's called Saguenay, and it is, you can see on this map, located not too far away from Quebec City and a little bit further away from Montreal, the very large city in the Quebec province. Get a little bit closer in, you'll notice that it is just off of the St. Lawrence Seaway. There's a very important river system that you can actually see beluga whales in going up in that region. And but as you can look at around that map, it's pretty, the towns and the cities are pretty far in between there. So this is a very ends up being a quite rural area once you get out of that larger city of Saguenay. So this region depended upon industry as in resource extraction as its primary economic drivers early on. So the timber industry was very important, but they also produced aluminum. Sorry, I had a little tickle. Aluminum, they had a smelter. And then of course, agriculture is very big in this part of the world. And all three of these industries, for various reasons, as we're noticing around the world, especially in industrialized countries, all three of these were declining in terms of the jobs that they were providing, and to some extent the economic benefits they were providing the small towns. So to address that, at the province level, they created a plan called Plan Nord, and that would focus on this region in terms of economic investments. And one of the key industries they wanted to focus on was tourism, because of the tourism was already an important industry. And so they identified the tourism assets. So the indigenous and the cultural tourism assets were a key aspect. So the region has both indigenous in terms of people who have been in the area with strong cultures since the beginning of time and still exist there and are still engaging in cultural activities, as well as the cultural aspects from settler period and colonial period, and those cultures that are still prevalent, from music and to arts and so on. And this region also has very strong ecotourism and adventure tourism potential. So lots of trails and wilderness areas and lakes to sail on and kayak and canoe. And so lots of those assets as well that were available. And these are just a few of the images that you can find from this region. I didn't take these photos specifically, but the upper left-hand corner is the historic timber mill, the logging mill that they had, and it's now an event space. And you can see that even though it is Quebec, which is not nearly as mountainous as our region, there's still quite a bit of interesting topography there as well. And in between, you've got vibrant small towns and arts and other cultural aspects. So some of the success that they saw came from partnerships and collaboration. So this was an engagement that took place across the whole northern part of this region, and it wasn't just each small town trying to go at it by themselves. They found ways to work with each other. There were cross sectors between the historic aluminum industry, and they brought in a company to start making aluminum framed mountain bikes. And then that company partnered with local tour guides to do mountain biking in that area, for example. The key aspect was that it wasn't just the government coming in saying, we're going to start doing this program and hope you guys like it. It was from day one, the community was engaged. It was a very grassroots program, very similar to what we're doing today in terms of getting people at the ground floor, having conversations and figuring out what it is they want and working together to make it happen. A key emphasis from the beginning was that high quality infrastructure takes time, and you need to identify that early on and start to invest in it early on if you want to see results in any reasonable amount of time. And so that was something that happened very early on in this program. And you've probably heard this before as well, but they didn't focus on elements that they had that everywhere else in Canada has or everywhere else in North America has. They focused on the distinctive attractions and the products and the experiences that told their story, and the story that only this part of Canada, this part of Quebec can tell that story. And so that a lot of has to do with, that's why getting people involved at the very beginning, because people are what is often most unique about these tourist destinations. And you can't assume that everyone's going to show up, hey, well, let's do tourism. Great, I know how to do that. Not necessarily, whether it's running a small business, whether it's being a tour guide, whether it's working at a small inn. There's some specific skills and expertise that you're going to need to invest in training in order to be able to fill those roles. And then finally, after all that, of course, you need to get the word out. So you've created this amazing product. You've invested in the infrastructure and in the people power. and there needs to be some marketing and promotion of the destination at some point. So that was the first case study, a small community in central Quebec. Finally, let's look to the south, which is state of Oregon, and they're northeastern Oregon. So again, there's might be some similarities geographically, as well as culturally, as well as some of the challenges that are being faced. And so Travel Oregon, I think Mike brought this up earlier when he was talking about how some of the destination development work that WTA wants to do in Washington is based off of, loosely based off of some of the initiatives that happen in Oregon. So here's a video that was produced for Wallowa County, which is one of the regions similar to Ponderosa region in Oregon. So I'm going to press play and hope that this works. And Mike, you'll give me the thumbs up if you start to hear something. Okay.
Oh, you commandeered my love. It was useful for the time, like whiskey and wine. And oh, you set these flowers dry, hung up while they're dying, no bed left to lay.
When I came here for the very first time, I just thought, whoa, where has this place been? It's just this stunning world of incredible mountains, deep canyons, beautiful prairie.
I literally rode into town and said, this is as far as I'm going.
So traditionally, Wallowa County, of course, farming, which we still have, but we also had a very thriving timber industry.
The logging industry fell off in the early 90s, and we were really hurting.
That was a huge upset to the local economy.
Tourism is probably now our number one economy.
One of the reasons why it's such a great diversification of the economy is because it's actually an industry that's growing. Pretty much every activity in Wallowa County is related to our natural resources. Many, many people who want to live here are looking for opportunities to create businesses to employ themselves. Agricultural related tourism, I think, is something we're just touching the tip of the iceberg. We have so many wonderful farms and ranches, and people looking at how can they share some of those experiences and how can that help them diversify their income.
We own and operate the Six Ranch, and it's been in my family for 130 some years. We're two women, a mother and daughter, working together.
We are a working cattle ranch. That's our main operation.
We also have a greenhouse, we have honey, we have eggs, so we're raising food locally.
Tourists here have really started to value where their food comes from, and going to restaurants and saying, you know, do you have any local products? That feeds our enthusiasm to make it available. There's a population of 2,000 people, and it would be a challenge to have a sustainable business in any way if you weren't relying on tourism. We often talk about holding on to tradition, and sometimes that's seen as a very negative thing. We come from a tradition of change and of adapting to whatever's happening to survive.
Yes, we're producing really good, healthy food and providing it to you, and you're happy about that. To me, that inspires me every year. I feel really lucky to do this.
My
son Austin and his wife Heather were looking for a way to move back to the county and called me up and said, okay, Dad, you've been talking about doing a distillery for years. We went together and got the distillery started, and we're building a job for them to move back to, as well as providing a place to go with part of our farm products. I know exactly what I'm getting, what I'm using. I think it adds a lot of value to the products we make at the distillery. It's a nice feeling to be able to help add to the economy.
We really need to let people know what is exactly here. Why do you want to come out to Wallowa County? The short answer, I guess, is the opportunity to ride such a varied terrain. The more people that come in and tell their buddies that, hey, there are some amazing rides, whether you be a mountain biker or a road bike, cyclocross, downhill, it's here for you. There was definitely a need we discovered to provide services for cyclists in the area. A group of us got together and developed a plan to put bike racks in 4 towns. There's a shuttle bus that we were able to install a bike rack on that. I think more people will utilize it the more the infrastructure is created. The more we can do that and educate folks on where to go and what to do, the better.
Over the last 3 or 4 years, the bikers among the Eagle Cap Nordic Club have worked pretty hard to improve the trail tread and the clearing on about 20 miles of mountain bike trail. That's 4 different trails, and also improve the signing and the maps we have so that people can find their way around those trails. When I come up here, at least every couple of weekends, I'll see new people that haven't been here before, and I'll certainly take time to explain how to get on the trails.
I think any community that's looking at trying to do tourism development, you need to find out what the vision is of the people who live there. What do they want the future of their community to be like?
I really enjoy for people to come here and see how beautiful it is, and I think it's key to us keeping it that way.
To be thinking in terms of at the community level and at the individual business level, how can I also think about the sustainability of that business? What kinds of decisions can I make? And in the marketplace, those decisions can also attract visitors who are interested in supporting tourism that is sustainable.
Listen to your customers. They know the questions to ask. And then sell your story. People want that. It's that same connection of food and education and having fun.
Start the conversation locally. Look at what you have. Look at what the assets are that you think you can build on. And then bring in some outside help. Bring in a facilitator. Talk to Travel Oregon. Find out how to grow that conversation to the point where you can come up with a few things that you really want to work on together.
The word is slowly getting out that Wallowa County is the place that has it all.
We all land here for different reasons, I think, but ultimately we end up staying for the same.
Okay, so hopefully in at least one of those 3 case studies, you saw something that might relate to your community, to your region. So you might want to take a photo of this slide, because again, you won't see this again, but the main purpose here is once you're in the small group, compare notes, compare what you thought was similar, what was relevant to you. And is there anything that you saw that, wow, they were working on that? That's something that I would like to pursue in this region. This is something maybe we should try and work on together. So Mike, if you can do the magic of getting people into the small groups, and we will, I think 20 minutes on this one, do you think?
Sounds good.
Okay. So let's see what you all learned from each other. Where were the similarities? Where were the differences? Was there anything that inspired you, either because it was great or because you want to be different?
I'll touch on the point we got to right at the end was when we launched the ad from Northeast Oregon. We live in a time where we have to be culturally sensitive, and we know that when we're marketing out, we need to show a diverse offering to all groups. And so it is a piece that was missing, and having come from those programs in Oregon, it was a piece we struggled with, because that community, much like our community, does not naturally have the diversity that we hope to aspire to. And so I think that that's something that when you're building out these campaigns and you're marketing these assets, make sure you're mindful of who you're involving within those promotions, to make sure you show that it is a welcoming place, because we have a bad history, honestly, within that context in Northeast Washington, and we're going to be working against that. It's not going to happen overnight. It happens culturally from the bottom up, and so we have to break that mold. So as we show off those assets, and as we show off who lives here, who makes this community great, we need to make sure we show a well-rounded community, not to the sake of overdoing this, but also making sure that it's obvious that it's a work in progress. So I thought that was a really interesting piece that we got to right at the end, that was drawing off of some of the advertisements that we watched there, for sure.
Excellent. I think that a lot of times that messaging doesn't have to, like you said, Lance, doesn't have to beat you over the head. A lot of times it's just visually demonstrating your values in ways that people can see and appear. And I think it goes across the spectrum too. Like the person in the video talked about putting bike racks out. That on a whole other conversation, but similar idea. Putting that bike rack out sends a message that people with bikes are welcome here. And so you don't necessarily have to put a big sign up that says these are all of our values, although sometimes that can be nice as well. I mean, when you see signs, all are welcome here, that certainly does send that message, but sometimes also just making sure that the subtle messages are present and clear, which of course we highlighted that the Wallowa video was not very clear on that.
We touched on the industry perspective is interesting too, because we touched on the aspect that as we're developing tourism resources and activities, some of our communities don't necessarily embrace that. So I take timber industry as a whole. There's a fascinating documentary, if you're into mountain biking, that was done highlighting the Wenatchee, Leavenworth area. It's probably, Matt, you probably, I'm trying to remember the name of it, but it's like 10 years old now. But the struggle that the bike scene had with forestry and with the forest department, just to embrace that, hey, mountain bikers, we're not all dirt bags. We're out here, actually, we want to maintain the lands. We want to develop a efficient trail system that can be collaborative. And I look over our neighbors up in Priest Lake, the rub between ATVs, snowmobiles, and the logging industry is just I mean, there's not a week that goes by in that community that there's not a run-in of some sort. And that's one that's built, they live and die off tourism and logging. And so you've got two prominent industries. We're going to face those same challenges up north as we develop assets up there from a tourism stance.
Yeah, Lance, that documentary is called Pedal Driven.
Pedal Driven, yes.
And it's on Netflix, and you can see the much younger, prettier version of Matt Lyons at the end of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I would, if anybody, if you haven't watched it, I didn't know it was back on Netflix again. It kind of,
it might be off now. I don't know.
Yeah. If you get a chance, though, look that up. Pedal Driven is it's for us who are working in rural Northeast Washington. That is a documentary you should watch, because it really sets a tone for what you're going to face. I mean, you're going to face this with your county commissioners, you're going to face it with your Forest Service department, you're going to face it with your logging industry. It's just anytime you're wanting to use natural resources for tourism, that is the quintessential example of the challenge that you're up against. You can't, you're going to overcome it. It's just going to take time and energy, and you're going to get beat down when you're in the tourism section, and you're going to come back with a better idea and a more collaborative spirit every time, or at least an equally one. And I just think it is a challenge we will face in this region for sure, if you're not already facing it.
Well, again, the beauty is that you can learn from other areas, and I think that was the example that was brought up about the video. Was there inspiration points? Maybe, but there was also learning from. That's not necessarily when you make your video, you want it to look differently, and I think that's really great about using case studies in other regions that have gone through this challenge ahead of you. You can take the good and get rid of the bad. What about one of the other groups like to share? And feel free to jump in. There's so many people, I don't necessarily see you waving your hand.
I'll share some points on our group.
Thank you.
I think the overriding thing was all those videos was a mirror of Stevens County or Northeast Washington. And so that really jumped out at us. And then basically that it came down to a couple of things. First of all, we've got resources on the shelf that sometimes you just forget. I mean, Ted's got a phenomenal series of videos about Northeast Washington. Maybe we need to take a look at how to access and get those into play. Craig had mentioned the Carpe agreement earlier. That's on the shelf, and there's a tremendous amount of demographic information in there of how we can utilize, the Chuwila, especially in the Chuwila greater area. As I walk down through it, community engagement is a big thing. The one that jumped out at me personally was investing in human resource training and management. I know that's been a goal of the committee on the chamber, is to teach the employees in the Chuwila area to become ambassadors, since they're the front line, and know the story, so we can leverage that as a resource. And then one of the concerns that jumped out at me was, as we do this, is to avoid the gentrification of the area, so we maintain its unique area and culture. And so we don't, in my mind anyway, we don't oversell it for more than it actually is. Those are the top things that came out of the conversation to me. I don't know if anybody else in the group wants to jump in.
It's pretty funny. If there's a third one, we're the third one, right? And they said I was the spokesman, but I don't remember very well. But we noticed that we're in Chuwila, and we had the mayor from Spokane Valley, and we had somebody from Colville, but we found that we were all three related to all of the case studies. We could see the aluminum industry used to be really powerful around here. There was an aluminum plant in Spokane, and we had a plant up here in Chuwila that provided magnesium for the aluminum, and both of them have quit and shut down. And the forestry is really at, well, they're having trouble. The trouble that they're having mainly is workers. I have friends that are forestry people, and they're getting older, and their children do not want to go into the forestry industry. So it's a problem having the workers that will work and do that. We did see an uptake in the agriculture, in that farmers markets are becoming more popular, and that more and more people are attending the farmers markets. And we found that in Chuwila, in Colville, and in the Spokane area. So that's a plus. We talked about, one of the things that we talked about was the infrastructure and the signage, and how important that is. As a traveler, other places, you can be somewhere and you can almost be frozen because you don't know which way to go. And so the signage is so important, because you can't just say to somebody, we didn't say this in the meeting, but you can't just say, you know, you turn where Bob lives and then you go down, a few blocks until you see the purple house. And then, you know, you can't say that to visitors and they don't know that. Even if you say it to local people, they don't know where you're talking about, because you might be talking about the Schmidtkofer house and somebody else is talking about the Smith house, and it's the same house, just depends on who lived there. But we related to all of them, and we just, the one thing that we brought out, or that I brought out, is that we're really talking today about outdoor activities, and that there are indoor activities in our areas that should be included, especially in tourism. And being part of the community theater group, that was my push. But there's other indoor activities that people need to know, because not everybody is an outdoor person. You might have one outdoor person in your family, and the rest of the family wants to come along, and they need activities to do that are indoors, besides eating. And that's an indoor or outdoor that we all like. Anyway, so that's my little blip, unless somebody has anything more from our group.
I think what's also really valuable about the arts and the theater and those groups is those are often what keeps culture perpetuated in communities. So you mentioned a lot of history with just even the names of the houses and things like that. There's a lot of history that gets lost when people leave communities, but arts can be great ways to capture that culture and make sure that those stories live on, and I think tour guides also are great opportunities to share some of that anecdotal, who used to live in the house and why does it look like that. And so even though that might be, even if they're an outdoor tour guide, but if they are tapping into some of those arts and theater components that you bring up, Sharon, I think it's really valuable for the traveler as well as the community. I think there was a hand up while I was rambling. Yes, Rosemary.
I was also talking about the QR codes and the kind of accessing technology for our visitors. Our local community, it's all word of mouth, but how can we tap into some technology tools with our visitors? And it really brought to my mind the work that Shelley had done with her little app and the program that she was doing, and it had a QR code. And I think she started that 3 to 5 years ago, right, Shelley? And I don't think the timing was quite right. I don't think everyone kind of knew how to use that QR. And so maybe it's a great opportunity for us to kind of restart some of the programs that might have fallen away in the last year, and just kind of utilize the resources that we have available and kind of give them another kickstart.
Great ideas. And Mike brought this up at the beginning, but it was perhaps you couldn't hear him. So I'm going to repeat it. Sorry, Mike, I'm just giving you a hard time. And that this is just the beginning. So a lot of these ideas that you're generating, incredible, and we need to capture them. And this is going to be the group plus more who are going to make this all happen. And so keep those ideas rolling, write them down, make sure that we capture them.
One thing my group talked about was a cultural map, which I thought was a really interesting idea. I'm trying to let people know where those cultural experiences exist in the region.
Great idea. And again, the tourism can be harnessed as a motivation to do some of these things that are really impactful for local people as well. So Sharon, the points that you're bringing up about the theater and the cultural components that aren't necessarily the outdoor related, if you can harness the tourism industry in order to fund some of those things, and then you keep some of those stories that are so important, make the region unique, you keep those alive into the future. So we have one last section to go, and again, thank you so much for your stamina and your attention. I know not everybody could make it the whole time, but you folks are here, and it clearly is paying off. Lots of great ideas are coming from your conversations. And there's going to be an opportunity for one more small group conversation, but I want to just share just a little bit of information before we go into that small group. And so that's a bit about how to build this. So now you're doing exactly what I would hope you'd be doing at this point. You're coming up with great ideas. You're connecting with each other. You're connecting the dots. You're learning from other parts of the world and taking the good and throwing out the bad. And so how do we take that to the next level? So the first thing that you'll remember that the case studies in the Saguenay, in the Quebec was example was about forming partnerships. And so I stole this graphic, well, I made the graphic, but I stole the concept from a friend of mine who runs the Adventure Travel Trade Association. And they do destination development work around the globe. And he identified that in the places where the destinations are strong, that you have this equal balance at who's showing up to meetings, who's participating in the work. If it was all the government, things wouldn't, there'd be challenges with that because the government is good at certain things, they're not good at other things. But you need the government there because they might control the public land. They might be in charge of making regulations. An example is I did some work in Lewis County around agritourism and facilitating these several workshops to help grow agritourism there. And several times people brought up, yeah, but we want to do that, but it's not, the regulations won't allow it. And thankfully, one of the county commissioners was at this meeting, and she said, you guys, you need to know that we are debating updating our comp plan right now, and we have an opportunity to change this so that you can do agritourism like you're suggesting in the county. And so by making sure elected officials were there and government people were at that meeting, they were able to make much shorter the work that needed to be done at changing the regulation, because she specifically alerted them to that. You also need the nonprofits to be there. And also in terms of government, and it's not just federal and state, but you have tribal governments as well that control land, that have obviously tremendous history on the territory. So making sure that all levels of government are at the table are very important. Nonprofits, you've got your destination marketing organizations, your chambers of commerce, your arts groups that are promoting and incubating artists, so many different nonprofits. But if it was just them, they couldn't do all the work either themselves. And then finally, a lot of our talk is around economic development and around who's going to be the ambassadors for the region. And a lot of the times that's the frontline businesses. And we don't, if they're not at the table having conversations about what they need in order to grow their businesses, then we're going to be missing those conversations. So really thinking about who is showing up and especially who's on your invite list. And if your invite list is low on certain aspects of it, it's really important to do the best you can to reach outside of that bubble and figure out how to get those people there. So continuing on in terms of the other strategy, and not just partnerships, but also to engage and harness the communities. Several of you brought up how it's really important to make sure the community is involved. Otherwise, you lose them as a resource, but in some cases, you gain them as a foe or an opposition. And neither of those, and you don't want, you're not there to fight with people. You want this to be positive for them. So tap the local resources. Who are already working on these initiatives? Several of you are here at the table today, and that's amazing because you're already working on these initiatives. It's great to support you as well as vice versa, that you can tap into your networks. There's a lot of local knowledge. There's a lot, whether it's people who know the history and the stories, understand the geography, that know where the best topography are for trails and so on. There's so many different ways that the knowledge of the people that are in your community are there, but also harnessing knowledge from outside your community. As we just pointed out, there's lots of things we've learned from other places, both good and bad. And so bringing in some of those folks to talk about how do they tackle some of these challenges that you also want to tackle that have been brought up. It's really important to build the enthusiasm. So I always recommend that people consider a quick win. So something that can happen in 6 to 12 months that demonstrates the fruits of some hard work, and that gets people motivated and engaged to stay involved in the initiative and some of those bigger term challenges, whether that's infrastructure, but also it doesn't just have to be the longer term aspects that you talked about, welcomability and fighting back some of the stereotypes about that you brought up. That's also a long term, and so getting people engaged early and excited and seeing that success can happen will keep those members of your community engaged for the longer haul on some of those challenging but vital to the future. And community buy-in, so making sure that you are all championing this even outside of the tourism realm, as I already acknowledged that it's possible for people to have a stereotype or a perception about what tourism means, and in some places they might be correct, and that might not be what you're building. So making sure that they are on board with you from the beginning, educated about what you're trying to build, listening to them to make sure that they know that there's a voice, that they have a voice. And then finally, what we're trying to do is build local ownership and pride. And so that people are proud of where they come from. Their young people choose to stay in the community, to continue to invest in it, and that it's something that you could see in that video, for example, that people were very proud of the community that they live in, and that I think is really powerful. And travelers want to see that. They want to know that they're a part of something. So again, think about who's missing, who isn't here today, and who needs to be here. Not only of these three parts of the triangle, but in each of the sectors of the triangle. Do you have a diversity of the governments that are involved? Do you have a diversity of the businesses that are present? And think about how to recruit them to get involved. So one thing I also love is just how advanced you all are. And so several of you have been thinking about this question from the very beginning of our 4 hours together. But I really want you to focus now for our last breakout section to think about what are some of the gaps. Well, I'll go to the, considering what you've already identified as this is the Ponderosa region, and specifically, I'm interested in you coming up with what are the gaps that you see that need to be filled for your region. And in the end, this is a workshop put on by the Washington Tourism Alliance, and Washington Tourism Alliance wants to know how they can help. Whether that's building training programs, whether that's connecting you to funding sources, whether that's doing cross state conferences and to connect you with other regions. So thinking about what the gaps are in your region that need to be filled. Again, you've been saying them from the beginning of the workshop, so I know that there's going to be a good list at the end of this. And then specifically how the Washington Tourism Alliance can support you. And choose one of your ideas to share with the group, but you might want to have a second or third, because judging from how you are also cohesive in this group, your fellow participants might come up with the exact same one you were planning to share, which of course is powerful. So we're almost to 11:30. We want to be done for sure by noon. So I think we might only have about 15 minutes for this, Mike. So hopefully that may not be enough, but it'll scratch the surface and hopefully inspire some future conversations. So we'll break up into small groups again. And if you didn't take a photo of this, take a photo of this on your screen so you know what we're talking about. And then we'll reconvene at 11:40 to have our final conversation. All right, welcome back. And thank you again for your stamina today, and appreciate all your input and efforts. Here, that's not my Rusty, it's somebody else's.
No, that's ours, I'll mute.
No, it's fine. I'm joking. It sounds very similar to mine though. So we don't have a ton of time left, and I know that we do want to get a few of this list developed, but if you were the note taker in your group, or if all of you took notes, please be sure to send an email to Mike if your ideas if we didn't get a chance to get to you today. Mike, maybe you can put in the chat your email address so people can send you an email and share some of these great ideas. So I'm going to stop talking and let you folks jump in. And specifically how WTA can help you fill those gaps, because I think that was where a lot of really good discussions came in terms of harnessing that statewide initiative to do some of the work.
Well, I'll go ahead and start. Our group kind of really discussed big picture of our region, I think, which is what we wanted to do, but also knowing that we need to coordinate with the other regions across the state because we are one, but our region has probably had the least value perception of any of the other regions in the state, and that's very important to us. But on the flip side, it's very important for us to all continue with our identities, as well as sustainability, and not kind of staying away from an over-tourism type of an atmosphere as we move forward. So we talked infrastructure, we talked about economic development and having everybody at the table. But speaking from kind of the big DMO in the region, the metro hub, is that what this is bringing together is it's introducing all of us so that we can all lift up. And I think ways that we can help sustain and not do the over tourism is that for us, especially at Visit, is to really embrace our whole region and the rural areas. That's such a benefit that we have, and that we are not taking advantage of, frankly, because we didn't have the relationships and everything as we move forward. So we'll look forward to starting to reach out to the other areas. We can help lift up, we can help partner in different areas. It becomes a benefit both to our residents. As Sonia said, that majority of her events she said 70 or 80% are coming from Spokane, Coeur d'Alene, and the Spokane Valley. So knowing that there are benefits to our residents as well, and that's what our main purpose is quality of life for our residents. So really looking at those things to help to lift up so that we have people moving around, we have that economic benefit all the way around, but it's also a true destination appeal on all levels for visitors as we start to market outside of our regions.
Well, I can report from my group. I think that there are a couple ways that our group talked about where WTA can support, and so again, highlighting the fact that the Wallowa video was not necessarily as welcoming to all groups. It demonstrated a very specific target of people. And so WTA, when you are building your videos and your libraries and you're focusing on that, making sure that it's a more diverse audience, and that's not just racial diversity. Sharon brought up that she appreciated, and I didn't even I didn't do this intentionally, but that there was a person that wasn't in their 40s in one of my videos doing an active activity. And so I think some of those subtle messaging, it doesn't have to beat you over the head, but our group definitely would like the WTA and its resources to be able to provide some of that collateral that reflects the diversity of people that we hope to visit throughout the region. Sharon, I'm suffering with what you said about the memory fees. Now I forgot the other point, so I'm going to let you maybe jump in and fill in the gaps here. What else did we talk about? Or Shelley or whoever, or Ginger, whoever wants to.
Well, we did talk about building trust. We talked about that possibly you could help us with signage, cohesive wayfinding signs. I mentioned in our group that we're going to be putting some wayfinding signs in Chuwila in the next month or two, and it would be nice to have had not necessarily a template, but something to look at and say, oh yeah, this is what we're doing. And then tourists they'd see signs and they'd say, oh yeah, I know that that's an important sign for me. We also, we talked about identifying our region as Ponderosa. Some of us had never heard our region called Ponderosa. We like it, we just had never, so it's not something that's out there that we're aware of. I mean, I'm old enough that it's still the Inland Empire. Nobody knows that anymore except old people here. And we talked about just trainings and how good it is to have this togetherness and how wonderful it is that we can do it online. That is something that's good that's come out of COVID, because I would not go to Seattle for this kind of a training. And some of you East Coast people would not come to Chuwila for this kind of a training. And yet we're all here together. And how important that is that we're getting some training. And we also thought about the people, as we saw this training, that we could identify that we wish were here, that we'd say, oh yeah, and that we could personally invite people, because people just, you get a generic email and you're not going to go sign up for a training because sometimes you think it's a joke or sometimes you just don't have time. But if you get a personal invitation on how important this is and how wonderful this is, we would have other people at the table.
We also discussed some facilitation between government and us nonprofits and other community groups, and also educating the natural resources extraction elected officials on what tourism actually is, that it's, because it's difficult to understand, you can't point in one building and say that's tourism. In our region also, capturing the impact of tourism is very difficult. And if WTA could actually assist local government in setting up databases or matrices, something to capture that information would also go a long way.
One thing that I think I've heard, pretty much from every region is just the value of getting this many people from your region from diverse places into a room, even if it's a virtual room. And one thing that, and really what we're doing, I mentioned this in our group just now, but after we get through these 11 regional meetings, we're going to talk about kind of how to move it forward in trying to create that synergy in these regions. And so maybe a quarterly virtual meeting where we maybe pick one theme each quarter, but then also give you plenty of time to interact and talk about ideas might be something we would do. Obviously, it wouldn't be a 4-hour meeting every time. It'd be more like an hour or two, but that might be something that we can consider as we move forward to try to keep this energy heading in the right direction.
And again, we talked about that some of this is chicken and egg. And so I think WTA coming in and saying, hey, we'd like to do this is a little bit top down in some respects. And then, but really emphasizing that this is powerful and strong because of you all at the grassroots level. And I think going forward with ideas like that, providing infrastructure and resource to help to support you, but making sure that whatever that training or initiatives or agenda is coming from you all is going to be important.
One thing that got lost in my glitchy presentation this morning that I never really got a chance to say is that we're not here to tell you what to do. We're here to help support you and try to give you that support as you build this out. And just try to facilitate and provide a place for you to come together and really move in the same direction.
So closing thoughts, we kind of did that. And I do want to say next steps, we kind of did that too. Mike suggested the idea of a quarterly meeting. I know that there also perhaps somewhat missed in Mike's presentation this morning, but the idea that there will be a further destination development program that you will all be invited to participate in and contribute to going forward, so that many of these ideas that you brought up today will have the opportunity to continue to be fleshed out at the grassroots level and realized. And a key part of that is just that vision that you have for what you want your region to look like. So much of it was captured today, but I think there's a tremendous amount to do. So lots more work to do, but again, so appreciative that you all took the time to show up here today. Sharon, your point about the virtual meeting, I think I'm also in agreement that there are things that I would in the past maybe not want to drive an hour to go and be a part of that I might want to be a part of here. But at the same time, I really do hope that I get to meet you all in person one day and learn some of the stories about your region and sharing some of the great things that you're doing in person too. So I understand that Shelley has a great Airbnb that I'm supposed to stay in, and you can all send me messages about what I should do when I come to visit. Here's my email address. You can learn more about my business if you want, and you can even read my non-political tourism related tweets if you are so inclined to be on social media. I want to thank you all for being here. Thank the organizers, Mike and Meg and Shelley and the rest of you who brought your community together. It's not the end, it's just the beginning, as I recently learned is what you're supposed to say at the end of a presentation. But the floor is open if people want to say anything further before we close off, but you are all free to go and enjoy the rest of this day and have a nice weekend.
Yes, thank you all for coming. We really appreciate your time. And we know it was a long meeting, but I think we got a lot done, and I think it was great to connect with you all. And we look forward to working with you in the future.